Hi there, this is Art and Such, and today I've decided to give you a tutorial that will help you get started if you're new to rainbow looming. So these are some first steps, some body parts you can do for your character designs, and I'm also going to tell you a little bit about the way that I got started looming and some strategies that I use. So let's begin really basic. We're going to talk about some of the materials that you use that you want to have on hand for looming. And depending on your project, this will vary, but in almost every single case, you are going to want one or more hooks. And I like to use one about a number 2 or 2.5 with a smaller hook head. And this way, with the smaller piece, a sturdy metal one, it won't get caught on the other bands and it isn't going to snap. You might also want to have another hook on hand with a slightly larger piece for when you're pulling pieces over from the side. If you're new to this and you worry that your band will slip off and you want to have a better support to hold the band on. So if you just want an extra anchor there, this will hold it better. The other thing you're going to need for most of your projects is a loom, and it's usually set with one row just above the other two or with all 3 rows together, and all of the pegs will be lined up. And you can get double looms, or you can attach looms together and add pegs so that it gets broader and you can make a wider frame. In most cases that isn't necessary, but it is an option. And if you've worked with these before, you'll know that the pieces can be removed and switched around, and most looms will come with a special tool, a special part, especially designed to unhook the back. The last thing in terms of hooks and looms, it's good to have on hand 1 or 2 holding hooks, especially for a larger scale project. Other things you might want to have, depending on your project, are beads and charms of a variety of sizes. Some projects will call for a little heart or a little star, or maybe like a letter for your superhero. If you have extra beads on hand or charms, keep them nearby. I also have a number of things that I use for my eyes because different characters and different projects call for different sorts. So something with a flat eye, for that you might want some threadable googly eyes. And if you don't, you can also get ones that can be glued on or possibly put on in other ways. You can get pearl beads of various sizes, and I keep a couple of Sharpies on hand with which to draw on the pupils. I try to have beads in different sizes. So I have my small ones, I have my larger ones. Some characters have big goggly eyes, some have small ones. You can also have the teeny tiny pony beads or the slightly larger ones. I don't think I have one at hand right now. Oh, yes I do. If you have colored beads, those are sometimes handy for eyes as well. And you can always use bands to make the eyes. And if you're using bands for the eyes, you'll pick your color of choice, wrap it 1, 2, and 3 times, and that will make one eye. And for a second eye, we do the same thing. 1, 2, 3. And then you pull it onto the color of your character's skin or fur. And if this is looking a little bit hard, don't worry, I'm going to go over the hook transfer, how to pull it over in a minute. But this is another method of making the eyes, and I'll show you one more. And most of what I've learned and what I'm showing you, these are things that I've learned about by looking at other loomers' channels and seeing what they do and adapting pieces or strategies from their projects to fit mine own. Another kind of eye, this is from DIY Mummy, I believe. You start by wrapping your pupil color 3 times, and then you put a white band around. You wrap it once on either side so that you get 2 loops on either side, and you would repeat that and carefully pull it onto your skin colored band. and try and keep it in the order. I will also show you while we're at this another method for putting beads onto your band. This is from Kate Schultz's channel. If you have a bead with a small hole in it and you want to put it onto your band, I'm going to show you just with one of these. You could take a thin wire or a piece of dental floss and press it through both of your eye beads. Pop it through your skin or fur colored band and bring it back through both of your eyes until you can pull it onto the middle. So those are some ways of threading eyes. You could also, one last thing, if you have beads with a large hole, you can put it right on your hook and slide it over. And you usually will place both your eyes onto the band at the same time so that you get something like this. So let's talk about basic chains, because you definitely need to know that for any kind of looming. This is where you start. And I'm gonna use some green and white here. And whenever you start, you look for the part that is rounded on the top. It makes a little horseshoe. And you start above the rounded piece and you move it downwards. If this is too basic for you, feel free to skip ahead. Just trying to cover all the bases here. What we do is we go down, taking 2 pegs at a time, covering 2 pegs at a time, and we always overlap with the previous band. Whatever it is that you're looming, it's really important to have a strong and sturdy loom, strong and sturdy bands, and at least one really good hook. Otherwise things are going to fall apart and you're not going to have fun. Now if we were to start looping up and making this into a chain, what happens when we put our hook under and we pull it forward? Off go the bands. And that's why you will always see some kind of a cap band or a securing band on all these projects. For a chain, a simple single chain, to secure, you take a single band and you twist it 1 time or 2 times or 3 times, depending on how tight you want it to be. And then, really important, the open part of your hook is facing up away from you, the same direction that you're looping up the loom. The rounded part is pointed back. And you press back and you grab the bottom, and you can use your fingers, take it off and use your fingers if you need to at first, or just use the hook, bring it around the next peg. And as we go forward, you're going to look for the one that has 1, 2, 3 loops on it, and you're going to go through the top 2 and grab the bottom one, which is it's the band that comes from the peg above. And if they get really stuck together, what you can do is take your finger, pull it down. Or even pull it to the side, and that can help you to grab it more easily. You can see as I go, I kind of pull it to the side, over the side, and back up. You don't really have to do that so dramatically, but this kind of a wiggling motion to the side, and up helps it to get around the peg that it's on. And once you're at the top, you can put your hook through both of the pegs and pull it off. Now for a chain or something similar, if you want to make it longer, if you decide this isn't long enough, you need a longer extension, for instance, you can always go back onto the loom and start at the top or start somewhere further down. I'm just going to add 2 pieces. And to add 2 pieces, I start 3 pegs up so that I'll have room for 2 bands because they overlap, remember. And I place this over the bottom. And I'm going to pull this out of the way so that I can reach in again. So now I have 1, 2, 3 bands on this peg, and I take the bottom one and I'll go up and forward again. So that is a chain. We use those when we make hair chains, we use them to make extensions, and we use them for tails. Now let me show you how to do this on the hook, and then I'll show you a couple of variations. And we'll use 2 colors again. Now we have to start with our holding, securing band. This last band is going to be our first band now, because we need something to secure this before we start adding pieces. So I'm going to loop this 1, 2, 3 times. If you only loop it 1 time, you're going to have a loose piece at the end. And sometimes that's what you want or you need. If you're going to be pulling it somewhere, you'll want a little extra space. If you want the whole piece to look really tight, you can wrap it 5 times, 6 times. And if you're just doing a general one, you can do an intermediate number like 3 or 4. So I'm going to take my next band and I'm going to put it on the end of the hook. I'm holding this with my left hand, and I'm going to hold on to the hook with my right hand, and I'm going to try, there are a couple of ways you can do this. You can just press this over using your right finger and use your other hand to help, but you have to keep it a little bit tight here. Or another way that you can do it, depending on how far your reach is you can take the hook in your left hand, pinch it in your left hand, and use your right hand or your dominant hand to pull this over. And if we let this piece go, our wrapped band is going to slide right off. So we need to put this onto the hook to hold it in place, and then we can take our next band, and once more you can bring these 2 over using your right fingertip, your right hand to push and then replace. Or the other way once more, hold this with your left hand, hold the hook with your left hand, and use your right hand to slide it over. And you can make this chain as long as you'd like. Now the next kind of chain, you can do this on the loom or on your hook, and it's very similar, but just a little bit harder. If you're doing this on the loom, I'm going to show you just at the bottom. We'll use 4 pegs and make 3 sets. I'm going to put 2 bands together. And one rule that I found is that if you add more bands, you will have more to loop, but you'll get a thicker section there. I'm going to take 2 more bands and place them over the next 2 pegs, and I'm starting from the top rounded part. I'm working down, and then I'm going to put another 2. And we need to put a cap band on again so that it doesn't come off. So take a single, you can use your hook too, twist it once, put it over, and I'll do a second twist to make it just a little tighter there. And we do the same thing as before, except that now we're going to have 2 bands coming from the peg above, and those both need to be caught, one at a time or all together. The open part of my hook is pointed in the same direction that I'm looping, and you can hold on to that holding band so it doesn't come loose, and we wiggle this around and over. Now, as I said, if this looks really hard, you can take 1 band and bring it over, and then go back and get the other band. You just want to make sure you get both, and I'm going to show you what happens if we miss one. Although, if you're like myself and most new loomers, you will discover this on your own. I'm going to come up the last time, and we'll take this off, and you can see there's a loose floppy band, and that's the one that didn't get looped through. The last basic type of chain is one where you use doubled over bands, and this you'll see a lot, or you'll use a lot if you want to make a tail. And these tend to be tighter, but they don't have to be. They don't have to be too tight or too long, I should say. You take the color you want at the tip of your tail, and you're going to wrap it as tightly as you want it to be. So if this is to the end of my tail, I'm going to have a little bit flopping about. So I'm going to do this a 3rd time. And for this kind of band, that seems like an okay tightness. You have to play around a little bit. Then I'm going to take my next color, and you can even put down your hook for a minute. Let's do a darker one so you can see it better. Because you're going to take it, you're going to twist it around and put it back onto those fingers. And now I'm holding it on 2 fingers, 1 finger. And again, you can press your wrapped band over using your right hand, or we'll do this again. Take it, twist it. I'm using 2 fingers from each hand. Put it on the end of the hook, and I can switch hands. Keep this tight and hold the hook with my left hand while I pull this over and put the other piece on. And I'll do a couple more really quickly to show you what this will look like if we made this draped tail a little bit longer. Now, when I started this, I was dropping stitches all over the place. I had loose bands, I had pieces unraveling, and believe me, this did not go as quickly. But if you want a little tail, you'll get something like this. And when we want to finish a chain or a tail, we take one side, you can see it's divided, and you pull the side over the top of the hook. And then this can be stuck through the bands on the back of the body or wherever it needs to go. And let's pretend this is the body just for a second. You put it under some bands and you're going to press it around and through. And then you get it secured in place. What I would like to do, what I'm thinking of doing is for my next design, maybe we'll put that on video and you can watch me as I go through the process, and you'll see the finished results as I get to it and as we figure out our way. Let's do a couple of arms. I'll show you some arm techniques. And you can do this on the loom or off the loom. I'll show you how to do this on the loom. I'm gonna come down from the top, and I'm gonna make some short arms. I'm just gonna do 3 sets of 2 bands coming down, and we're gonna pretend this is for an animal. And animals tend to have short, chubby paws. I'm gonna take 2 bands this time because I want it to be just a little bit extra thick. I'll put it on, twist it, and twist it. Now we have a lot of bands, but the ones that we want are the 2 that are coming from the peg above. So you can pull those to the side, point your open part up, go inside, and bring it forward. Go inside, bring your next 2 forward. Go inside, bring your next 2 forward. Oops, almost caught the wrong ones. And this can come off. You always pull it off from the top down, and you always want to get your hook inside the bands on the top peg first. Otherwise, there won't be anything to hold it. So this could be a cute little bumblebee or, I don't know, woodstock kind of arm. And if you're making an animal, you'll have to look at the pictures, you'll have to look at the animal and decide, are all your arms and legs going to be the same length, or do you want some longer or shorter? And now I can look and I can say, well, let's make our next one together, and we'll make it a little bit longer this time. So we're starting backwards. We're going to start at the bottom now with our cap band, and we used 2. So I'm going to take 2 and wrap them. I'm going to pull them onto 2 yellow bands. And then onto 2 black bands. So I have 2, I'm holding them, I'm pushing this over, or you can switch hands. And we're gonna do 2 yellow. You also have to decide when you're making your character, your critter, where your colors need to be different or the same. Okay, so let's say I want to make one of these longer. All I have to do is on the loom or on the hook, I put an extra band on. And then I can look and I can say, does this look more like the arm that I want or this one? And the one that you choose is the one you can use. And now I've decided I like this. So I'm going to hold on to this or put it on a different hook. Put it on the other side here, or onto the loom if you prefer, and add 2 more black. So let's say instead of doing it on the hook, we've put it on the loom. To make it 1 set longer, I just need 1 set of black. I pop this on, and lift both of my blacks up and over and take it off. Legs are very similar. I'll show you, let me show you how to make muscles for the arms, and then we'll do some boots. And I'm just going to show you the hook method for the arms. I personally like it better, but regardless. What we do to make the arms a little more muscly is you take one side off and hold on to it. And I'm going to pinch this right here on the hook. I'm going to take 2 bands, more if you want it thicker, place them on the top, slide this over, slide this back, so that now my yellow band has gone through one side of the black bands. And I put the other side back on, and I slide that through 2 or more bands, depending on how thick I want it to be. And then I can meet them both back together, oops, like so. So now you know how to do an arm, the length you decide as you go. The thickness can be altered by adding more bands in the different sets. You can do it on the loom or on your hook. You can make a small little set of muscles. You can add a second set if you want to make it really big. You have some ideas for how to make the eyes, how to do the chains. I'm going to show you our next thing here in a second. Let's do a boot or a couple of shoe methods before we proceed. So the most simple of shoes, you take a single, you wrap it, and we're going to put it onto a couple of sets of double bands, so 2 bands. Put it on. Put it on, decide how long you want your shoe to be. You can even leave it like this and then go on to make the leg. Another thing you can do is you can take a single now, when your foot is done, twist it and pull it through. And this will tighten it up at the ankle area and make it easier to bend it into shape. For a more complicated, a more complex boot, you can do Kate Schultz's version. And I'm just going to do this with single band. Well, we'll do it with 2. Okay, we're going to take a single, wrap it 3 times, pull it onto 2 bands, hold that here, take 2 bands of your boot color again, wrap them once and twice, put the other end back on, and these all slide onto 2 bands. And then if you want to make this thicker, you can have more bands wrapped. You can have 2 bands wrapped at the beginning. You can add another set by taking these off, wrapping 2 more bands and putting it back on. You can take another band, double it over, and pull it on to get your ankle section. And another thing I should note here, another option for your arms, I think I've undone this already, but if you make a piece just like the tail, you take your skin color, wrap your single, and you use some doubled over bands, you can get a skinny arm. And I like to count as I go. I'll tell you a little bit about notations in a minute. If you want your arm to be only skinny for part of the way and then to get thicker, you can switch part way. So I've done some with doubled over bands, and then maybe my character is wearing a pink t-shirt. So now I'm going to take 2 bands and come through, and 2 bands and come through. And now I have my shirt color, and what I like to do is take a single or even 2 bands, put it on, and just like a ponytail, give it a couple of twists and wraps so that we have a more final feeling to that part. And you can do 2 or 3 if you want. So those are some body parts. I'm going to talk really briefly here about chains, chain extensions. And this you'll see, or you'll need when you're making a broader face, when you want the side of the character to be wider, if you want a skirt to flare out. And most of most extensions can be done on the hook, although sometimes you'll want to use your loom. So if I want to do an extension for the side, I'm going to loop it just once here, or you can do it twice. And I'm going to take 2 bands and 2 bands. And when I'm making my character, if I want it to be wider here at the bottom, what I would do is put down all of my bands, press this on top, and usually you'll look for the bottom cap and pull it over the last band where you want your extension to sit. So you have to imagine for a minute there are bands here. And then you take a piece out of the side. And now when you take this off of the loom, your skirt will have an extra puff, an extra ridge, an extra edge to it. Or you can leave a little bit loose and have a little lump out on the side. So I think we're going to do a bit of a very sample character here, just something very easy. But first let me tell you in brief some other techniques, some other ideas I have when I'm working. So some general rules. I like to have a picture before me when I'm starting my project. When there's something specific I want to do, I like having a picture. I like having clear colors. I look up my character online and I try and get a clear picture with a full body image and a clear view of the face and all of the features. And this sometimes takes a little bit of looking. This is just something I've doodled here to use as an example. Once I have that picture, I look at the eyes. I try and decide what kind of eyes I'm going to use. If the character has, you know, a little eye with a tiny pupil, I might want a small bead with a black eye drawn on. If the character has long eyes, then I'm going to want to use a pony bead. And you have to decide accordingly. Sometimes you just want to use bands. Sometimes bands work well. But if I see that my character has dark black hair, I don't want to use dark black beads because I know it's going to get blended in and hidden. Let's make a quick note here also for a nose. If you want to make a nose, you do it just like your tail. You wrap a band, you put on doubled over bands usually, or if you want it thick, you can put in 3 bands. Like, I'm gonna do my wrap, and then I'm gonna we'll even put 4. You might want this for an animal if you want just a broader nose. You can do 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, and put this onto a band to go across your face, and that will give you a broader nose. Or you can have a single again, and maybe you want a long skinny nose. Then you double over your bands and you make your nose as long as you want, and you can make an ear the same way. And when you're done, you usually will want to put it on, we'll put this all into practice, don't worry, these are just some aspects to look at. Put it onto a single so it stretches across. Other things to look at or think about when you're viewing your picture: what colors do you need? What are the closest colors you can get? Are there details like a belt? Is there a collar? You want to figure out how much of a neck there is. You're also going to think about how many pegs you're going to need for each part. So let's say I've made a head like this before, and I know that I'm going to need about 4 pegs. I'm going to have to use this much of my loom to make a head like that, for example. Now I look at the body, and I see the body is just a little bit bigger than the head, but it's actually really close. So I'm going to say the body part is going to need 4 to 5 pegs. And the skirt is about the same size as the body. So that will be 4 to 5 pegs as well. Now my loom only goes so far, so I know that I'm not going to be able to fit all of this on the loom at the same time. And that's where it's important to know how to pull a chain off, how to pull a section off and replace it. So I think we're about ready. This isn't the character I'm going to use since I've added in the annotation. We're going to pull our loom out and we're going to just do a very base figure and try out some features. So let's pick a color for our hair. And we're gonna be conservative. I'm gonna use some brown hair. So I'm gonna take 2 bands. We want this to be sturdy. If we use only single bands, everything's gonna be, you know, kind of floppy like this. So I generally use double bands, which means 2 at a time. And I'm gonna go from the top center to the top right. Now, before we go further, I should note, if you are making your own design and it's a new design, 2 things you'll want to do, or that I would recommend. One is have your camera ready and take pictures of the steps as you do them. And that way, if you like the way something looks, you'll remember how to do it. If something isn't quite right, you can look at the design on the loom and you can adjust it accordingly. And if you want to make it at a later time, you'll have that there as well. And the other thing, I always keep a piece of paper handy with a pen and I make notations. So you'll understand these more as I go along, but I will write the name of the body part or the part that I'm doing. So let's say the arm. And I will write the number of bands that I've used for the cap. So maybe I'll just use 1 band. And I have my own notations. I'll write WR, and for me that means that I've wrapped it. And then I like to write that it has gone on to, maybe I've done 3 sets of double bands. So 3 sets of 2 bands with 2 bands each. And that means that I've gone, okay, let's say I've wrapped 1. And I might write down how many times I've wrapped it, and I'm going to put it onto 1 set with 2, 2 sets with 2, and 3 sets with 2. And that's what this would mean for me. And I'm also going to write down the color. So this is going to be, let's say this was blue, I would write BL for blue, or capital BL for black, whatever will help you remember, or you can mark it down in that color. I also will write the letter D if I've doubled over my bands. So I could say on 4 single doubled over bands. And the last thing that I'm going to note here, just for the time being, is extensions. When I make an extension, I will write whether it's a side extension, a hair chain, and I'll write how many I did. So I might say I've used 1 and I've wrapped it over 5 single bands, or whatever the case might be. And the other thing to have in mind is when we do holding bands, which I'll explain soon, if I've done triangle bands, I'll write it like that. If I've done straight bands, I'll draw them in lines. And I write down when I've doubled them down. So if I have 4 triangle bands, I might draw the first 3. And then my last one, I'll put a D for doubled over. And I'll show you what that's all about in a second. So those are just some of the ways that I keep track. Now we're going to continue with the hair. We want it to go down to either side. And we don't want the skin to cover up the hair and to have that lost. So I'm going to continue down on each of these bands, each of these pegs. And I start at the top and I come down once on each now. And then for our face, I'm gonna give my guy a blue face just because. Taking double bands again, and I'm gonna keep going straight down. And what you can probably start to see already is that if we were to loop these all up, this piece would be separate from this piece and separate from this piece. And that's why we're gonna have holding bands a little later. I'm going to come down one more time in the middle, and I'm going to come down once on either side. And this is going to make for a very small little face, but that's okay. This is just what we're doing here. So we've gone out, we've gone down a little further in the middle, and we've come back in. And these are all double bands. I'm gonna give my character a little neck, and I'm gonna keep it in the same color as the skin. And you're gonna see two main kinds of necks. One kind is like this, and it's just gonna be a little piece that will hold the body to the head. And the other kind will start right where your neck finished, or right where your chin finished, and come down like this. These ones are no fun because you have a lot of bands to go through. It gets really hard, but some characters have that kind of a figure, and that's what you have to work with. I'm going to use my skin tone for tone color to come down. And I haven't left a lot of room. So let's say that I'm going to make the body a little bit longer, and I'm not going to have room. So I'm going to do the other part now. And I'm going to give my guy blue feet. He's going to have very simple blue feet. We're going to take 1, 2 bands, wrap them 1, 2, 3 times, and I'm going to pull it onto 3 sets of blue bands, double blues. So there's 1, oops, 2, and 3. And I'm going to make this into a girl just because I want to show you what the extensions look like. So we're just going to do the legs, and it will connect with the skirt. You can change the color here if you want it to look like pants instead. I'm going to do the other leg now, or the other foot, boot, whichever. And 3. And okay, we're just gonna do this. So let's fill in some of our body. I'm gonna use some purple. And when I switch to my shirt color, I want the skin to show up a little bit further down. So I'm gonna put one more set here. And then we're gonna go to our dress color, skirt color. And I'll come down on either side with double bands. And I'm gonna go right to the bottom of the loom. And if we're looking at the proportions on this one, right now I've done just a little bit more than the face for the upper body torso. So right now this is my torso. It's just a little bit longer than the face. And the rest of this, I'm going to switch colors actually, and that will be a skirt part. And that's going to be a little bit longer than the torso. And some of your characters will have very long torsos, and some will have very long skirts, and so forth and so on. Some characters have really long heads and then small bodies, and you have to think about that as you're putting things together. So we're always moving downwards, and you also want to line up. See, this one is higher than those two. So where my torso ends, it's going to be higher than the other two because I'm working on a slant here with my middle row raised. It's just my own personal preference. If you're doing your loom straight across, then these can all be just set down equally alongside each other. Now there are a couple of ways that you can attach legs. One way is to take the bands in your hook and stretch them across from the bottommost peg that you've used to the middle peg. Repeat that on the other side and put your cap band on. Another thing you can do is put your leg directly onto that bottommost piece. Another thing you can do is place your leg onto 2 more bands of your dress color. Oops. And then slide that on as we did the first time. So bring that from the bottom side peg to the middle peg. And I'll show you one other way, and we'll just go with the last way. The other thing you can do, I'm actually going to bring this up here, and you bring your double bands in from either side, and then add your legs on top on the side, and any which of these ways is fine. So this person has very short little stubby legs now. I'm also going to make a tail, and there are two basic ways to attach a tail. And we're going to do it in his skin or fur tone color. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do a very short one here. So one thing that you can do is you can grab one of these bands, slide this over, and this will actually just show up on the back when you're done. The other thing we can do is put it on the side for the time being and pop it on when our project is complete and off of the loom. Okay, so we have our legs. Let's do some arms next. We're gonna give our character little pink gloves. So I'll just do a single. I'm gonna wrap it a couple of times. Let's wrap it 3 times so it's not too loose. I'll pull it onto 2 more of the glove pattern, the glove color. And then for the arm, I'm gonna do short arms so that it sort of matches the legs. So let's do 1 and 2 and 3. And whatever kind of arms you use, you will generally just want to pop them onto your shoulder pegs, so down from your neck and down to the side. The other way you can attach it is by placing it over those 2 bands together, or 2 pegs together from either side of the hook. But this will work just fine, and the other method tends to get your arms to stand out a little bit. Our other arm. And double bands of our glove color, and if I was designing this for keeps, I would be writing this down, and I would be taking pictures of the layout of the loom before anything is loomed up and before anything is taken off. 2 and 3. And if you haven't taken a picture yet and you want to, it's not too late, but you also have this video to refer back to, so it's not a problem. Let's do our holding bands for the body, and these are the triangles I was talking about. If your character, your body is your loom is aligned and these all line up, then you can just go straight across. That's fine. As it is, we have them raised, so we take the bands and we make a triangle from one side to the other and up over the middle. And I'm going to do that again underneath. And wherever you want your character to have a tighter section, like a tighter waist for instance on a woman, you take your band, you double it over. You can do this on the hook or on your fingers, and you stretch it across over the section you want to be tight. So in this case, I would be writing down that I have 2 single triangles and then 2 doubles, and then I'm going to leave the bottom loose because I'm going to have the bottom flare out a little bit. So my last 3 are just going to be loose ones. Just pop that over the legs so it's not in the way here. We have to cap off the bottom so there's something to hold it together. Take a single, wrap it twice, tighter if you want. This is most of our lower body, but I think we will give her a bit of a side extension because we were talking about that before and I want you to see what it's about. So we'll take a single and we're going to wrap it 2 times. And I want my extension to go up to here. So I need 1 set, 2 set, 3 sets. And I'm using double bands, but not doubled over. That's where it gets a little bit confusing. And I take the top of my extension here, the ones that are on my hook, and I'll place them onto that band where I want my side to get a little broader. And then we look for the top of this chain, put our hook through and pull it onto the peg where we want our extension to finish. Or you can even bring this piece down and let that piece go loose. Gonna catch a little bit out of either of these in between chains and pull them over the side. And then we'll make one of these for the other side as well. Single wrap twice or 3 times, pulled onto 3 sets of double bands. And I learned some strategies for the extensions from tutorials by A. She did a lot of princess dresses way back when. I'll also mention, if you want a 3-dimensional skirt or a 3-dimensional body part, Kate Schultz, among others, has some great tutorials that show how to make hair on the back of the head and how to make 3-dimensional skirts or tube shapes. I'm not going to go into that here, but there are a number of tutorials if you look up how to make a rainbow loom tube or pencil grip. So this is going to be wider, this is going to be narrow because we made these tight, this is loose, this is all ready. For our face, we were going to give our character a little nose. I'm going to make this a bit smaller, I think. And so for the nose that we made before, it was a single wrapped, pulled over a doubled over single, and I'm going to put it onto a single. Before I put this on, we're just going to do 2 loose triangle bands, and again you can make these double and tight if you want them to be tighter. And I have to decide, do I want my nose to be near the bottom of the face? Do I want it high up right under the eyes? I'm not too sure. I'm gonna put it right down here by the chin. And I think I'm gonna even pop it on top there and hope that that works. Well, we'll try this. Maybe this is where the experimenting comes in. You might have to try pieces in a couple of different places before you're happy with them. I'm gonna put them on the second pegs down and slide it under here. And for my eyes, I'm just gonna wrap some bands and my character will have green eyes. So I'll do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm using this turquoise for the skin color. That's what's going to be on the background where the eyes sit. So this is where I will place these, and we keep the eyes apart. You get your eyes on your band and you stretch it across the pegs at the level where you want it to sit. And once this is looped up, we don't want these pieces to slide around, so we can secure them by pulling the band that they're on apart in the middle and bringing it over the peg underneath or the peg above, or both if you want them to be really wide. Okay, we have holding bands. Let's make a couple of hair chains and then we can loop this up. So let's do really short hair chains. We'll do a single, wrap it 2 times, and if you want thick hair chains, you use doubled over bands or double bands, so 2 bands together. I'm just going to do a loose curly one using singles. So take a single, put it on, push over. And you figure out how many you want. I'm going to do 4 on either side. And I'll just pop this onto the second one down. We aren't going to get too fancy and connect it below. I'm just going to leave it loose for now. And we'll do for the other side. Put this on another 3. Or 4. I think we did 4. If you want your hair to be extra thick, you can have 2 of these chains and place them one on top of the other. You can also have a chain up high and start it at the top and come down, and that will add roundness just in the same way that it would if you were making an extension. This is I should say again, by no means an extensive tutorial, but we're going through some of our stuff. So let's talk about looping now, what we would do. You have your cap band on the bottom peg in the middle, and you have, in this case, 3 sets of double bands. So you have to look and see which ones rest higher above the others. And then you're going to push back the cap, and this is where it gets hard. But you'll find the top 2 and bring them to the side that they came from. Get your next two and bring them to the side that they came from. So you're going in order from the highest ones up under your cap to the lowest. And the ones that were left at the bottom go straight up. Now, depending on your pattern, you might have a collar, you might have a preference of which order these should be looped in. I'm using blue on each of these sets, so I'm not going to worry too much about which comes first. I'm just going to do the center first this time. And we go in and we're getting our double bands, and we're doing it like a double chain. So you take your 2 bands and you bring them up. And I'm holding the loom steady as I'm doing this because I don't want things to pop off. And if I go one further here, then these pieces are going to end up on top and they aren't going to come together with the rest of the body. So I have to make sure that everything up to this point is done before I go further, and that means coming back to the bottom. And here we have a lot of bands because I've put our leg and our extension. We want the 2 that are coming from the peg above. We need to push back all the others and loop forward. And we're going to have a lot of tension. It's going to be tight, but if you do it carefully and slowly, you should be all right. You can take 1 band at a time if you find it's difficult. If you've decided to thicken up an area by using multiple bands, you can take those a few at a time. And we need these last 2 turquoise ones. So we go underneath, push back the rest, and come forward. And we'll repeat this on the other side. So you only get your bottommost 2. And you can turn this over to the side. You can use your fingers, you can use an extra hook, whatever you need to get those bands over to where you can see them. Now, as this is a kind of person alien character and not an animal, I haven't done any added horns or ears. For those things, you can use the very basic method we used for the nose and the tail, or you can look at some tutorials and see which characters have ears similar to those which you'd like to make. Go inside and get the neck pieces. And I'm actually going to stop right here for a second, because if your body was really, really long and let's say you needed more room on the loom to make it. Let's say that your body went all the way up the loom and your neck was right at the top. What you would do is hold on to your neck piece and, starting at the top, take off your other bands. And if you've got all of them and you've double checked, then nothing should be coming loose. If it does, grab it as fast as you can because you're going to want to secure it with a C-clip. Now, when I get up here, before I take this off, I want my hook to go into the neck piece. So if my body was very long and this was filling up the loom, I could take it off here, and then I could put the head on. And my hair chain has come off. I'll have to fix that. And then I could place it back on here. So you can treat the body as a kind of chain extension like we did before, where you just add it back on after you've looped it up. Just fixing my hair chain. And of course, your hair on the side can go down lower. You can have hair color all the way here. You can have extra sets, whatever you need. At the neck, we get the top 2 bands, bring them over to the side. You really want to get them in order. You want your shapes, your looped shapes, to be nice and round. If they're not, it might mean that they're in the wrong place. Go inside, get your bottom 2, come up again, bottom 2, and on either side, we're just going to loop up. We're not going to worry about the chains today. And come to the center and loop up. And one more time to the center. And to secure this kind of a project, we need a single band. You want it to match or blend in, but you can use a clear. Put it on your left hand. With your right hand, keep the open part of your hook pointed away. Slide it through the bands in your top peg, all of them. Catch your band slide it up and through, turn it over so this doesn't come off, put your other end on, and pull one side up and over. And then we can carefully take it off of the loom. Now I'll show you how you can add a tail, and we'll talk very quickly about adjustment options and hiding things. Wherever your eyes are, pop them through. We want to do something with this. You can put it just on a C-clip, you can leave it loose. What I like to do is turn this around, come under a band, and pull this through. And you can pull it through a couple of other bands if you want to. And then we put it onto a C-clip, which to my early amazement is actually very reliable. I haven't had any slip off yet. If you have loose bands, you can do the same thing, slide them under and pull. If your hair needs adjusting, you can slide it under the bands, but this looks fine to me. And for our tail, what did we do with our tail? Oh, we used it for our nose. Okay, we'll do a new tail. Maybe we'll just take, what do I have here? This will work. Okay, so we made our tail however tight you want it to be. Pull two sides over the other. Gonna hold that. I'm gonna go through the back. As I said, you can incorporate this as you're looming, but that's fine. We go through sideways, we grab the tail and pull it through. And then you can bring the side over the other side. Like, take your band and pull it over the tail. Pull it tight and snug. Oops, I think I put it on backwards, that's not right. Let's fix that. I usually put under 2 or 4. There, now we've got it in the right place. So there's our tail on the back. Everything is secured. We have a nose, we've made some eyes. You press them to where you want them. If you've used beads, you can draw on eyes with your black band. We have a skirt. This has given us a bit of a puff in the bottom like we wanted, and our waist is cinched in. If you ever want it tighter, you can try and twist that band an extra half turn. Like triangle. It's one double. You can do it an extra time, half time. But it's hard to do. Okay, I think we've covered a lot of the basics into some of the harder stuff. I hope I haven't scared you off of this and that this has been useful to you. Please let me know if you have any other questions, and I'm gonna think about what we can do for a design to make together. Okay, thank you for watching.